So, simple compound interest. So before we get to simple interest, let's talk about what we would actually use this for in the real world. So kind of like what I was just talking about buying a car. So let's say I went to the bank of Trip and I said, bank of Trip, can I borrow $10,000 to buy a car? Trip is like, sure, you can definitely borrow $10,000. But do you think a bank would just give you $10,000 if it didn't have something in it for them? Right? No. So when you pay them back, you're going to have to pay them back with interest. That interest is extra. So Trip is like, yeah, pay me back $10,000 plus some interest. So every month when I'm making my payment, I'm going to have to pay him plus whatever interest rate he gives me. So ultimately, let's say I take out a loan for 5 years. After 5 years, I paid him back $10,000 plus some extra. That extra is called interest. That extra is called interest. So simple interest is a type of interest. It's a type of interest. Okay, simple interest is the interest just overall. So if I took out a 5-year loan, it's just the amount of interest on that 5 years based on the original amount. So if you're writing, try to try to listen and write at the same time. Simple interest, the formula is I equals PRT. That is not something you have to memorize. It's on your formula chart. I equals PRT. I'm going to give you all a moment to write because I want to make sure you understand what each variable represents. Yeah, baby. You okay?
Yeah, I scanned out the side.
Okay.
Doesn't that mean when I go to college I'm going to be 16? Well, if I'm going to be 14 next year.
Then you'll be 15 in 10th grade, 16 in 11th grade, 17 in 12th grade. So it'll be 17. 17? So y'all going to be youngins. Not that it matters too much. 18, when you're 18, you can't do anything more really from 17. Well, I guess no. What'd you say? I guess I guess you have to be 18 to get into certain places. But you're not going to visit those certain places because you're going to be in the books. Really? I was 18, but I graduated when I was 21, and then I got married a couple months later. All right, simple interest. Okay, I need you to pay attention very closely because if you do not have an understanding of what these things mean, you will not be successful with these problems. Okay, let's talk about what each variable represents. P stands for principal. This is the amount I either invest or take out in a loan. If you do not understand what I mean by investment or loan, I need you to speak up. So when I was talking about go to the bank of Trip and I asked him for a loan, that means I'm borrowing money. So I asked him for $10,000. That would be the principal. That's how much I'm taking out of the bank. That's how much I'm borrowing. So that would be the principal. Or let's say I went to the Bank of Emily. I'm like, you know what, Bank of Emily, I'm going to invest some money. That means I'm going to put some money in her bank. Okay. So when I invest that money into her bank, that would be the principal. Okay. So it's either the amount you borrow or the amount you invest.
So is this basically just stocks?
Honestly, I really have no knowledge of stocks at all. And so this is like the basic. Stocks gets a little bit more complicated. All right. R stands for rate. So this is the rate, the interest rate. So how much money is it going to be the extra adding on? When we're doing rates, it's going to give you a percentage. So for instance, your interest rate is 4.5%. However, rate has to be in decimal form. So how do I go from a percent to a decimal? Hey, what's that? Yes, left. Perfect. Okay, if you remember Miss Weekman, she taught you DP, percent to decimal. I'm put 2 places to the left. So 4.5% would be 0.045. So even though this was a decimal percent, it was still a percent. And so I need to change it into decimal format. T is always the number of years. Years. So what if it gave me 24 months? What would I do with that number? And how would I convert it to years? Divided by 12, because there's 12 months in a year. So 2 years. Okay. And then I stands for the amount of interest. Okay, this is very complicated, so I really need you to tell me if you do not understand something. Interest, that's the extra, okay? So, Trip, I'm gonna use you the whole time. So I went to the bank of Trip. I borrowed $10,000. After 5 years, I had to pay him back, but I had to pay him back with some interest. So $10,000 is how much I originally borrowed. But let's say I had $500 extra. That $500 extra I had to pay him back is the interest, the amount of interest. Okay? So let's look at an example. John takes $10,000 and goes to the bank to invest his money. Pause. $10,000. What would that represent? The P, because that's how much I invested. This is how much I start with, $10,000. John is told he can invest his money with 5% simple interest. 5%, what does that represent? The R. But do I want that in percentage? No. So how would I change it? 2 decimal places to the left. 1, 2. So that's what equal 0.05. This is my R value. If John invests his money for 10 years, pause. 10 years, what does that represent? T. So this is already in years, so I don't have to do anything to that. So 10 equals T. How much money will he have? How much money will he have? Okay, so let's go ahead and solve this. This said simple interest. So I'm going to write down I equals PRT. Simple interest. I equals PRT. Again, this formula is on your formula chart. So I'm just going to plug in what it gave me. So I equals, the principal was what? 10,000. So I'm going to plug that in for P. The R was what? 5%. As a decimal, that's 0.05. And the T is 10 years. And remember, when you take notes, make sure you at least have one good example in there, because you're not going to memorize this. Ain't none of you got photo memory. So you need to make sure that you're having some good notes. So 10,000 times 0.05 times 10. When I put that in my calculator, I get 5,000. That's a lot of money. But what did that represent? What does 5,000 represent? I equals 5,000. What does I represent? Interest. This is the amount of interest. This is the amount of extra. This is the amount of interest that added on to my original amount. So let's read the problem again. John takes $10,000 and invests his money. So how much did he originally put in the bank? $10,000. After 10 years, the amount of interest added on was $5,000. So he originally put in $10,000. After 10 years, $5,000 added on to that. That's the amount of 5,000 is the amount of interest. Well, what if I asked you then, that's not the amount he has in total. How would I figure out the amount he has in total? If he originally invested 10,000 and it added on $5,000 after 10 years, what would I do with the 10,000 and the 5,000? Well, I want to know how much he has in total. You add it together, right? This is how much I started with. It added on $5,000 after 10 years. So in total, I would have $15,000. So A, you're gonna get this a little bit later, but A stands for total amount. So John's total amount is $10,000 plus $5,000. So in total, after 10 years, John has $15,000. So this is the principal, is how much I started with. 5,000 is the extra interest. And so the total amount is $15,000. Y'all see how kind of complicated this is? Well, it's complicated to understand what it's asking for. Sometimes it will just ask for the interest. Sometimes it's going to ask you for the total amount. You need to understand the difference between the two. So the amount of interest was 5,000. The total amount was 15,000. Please ask me questions if you don't understand. Yes, baby? Yeah, we're definitely going to do another one. Absolutely. Trip?
So he invests his
Mm-hmm. So did you know that y'all can actually start bank accounts right now? Okay. When you invest your money into like a savings account, did you know that if you let it just sit there, it adds money to it without you doing anything?
Yeah, adds money.
Mm-hmm.
So interest is how much.
Mm-hmm. So like for instance, my bank account right now, I have however much in the savings account. If I don't touch my savings account, obviously I can add more money to it. But the bank, because I'm their customer, and because they enjoy me being their customer, or whatever, is adding money to my savings account every month without me doing anything. Okay, that's interest. I'm getting interest on my money. It's just adding money into my bank account. It's very small amount, like a couple of cents, but it's still adding some kind of percentage to my bank account. So that I'm giving them money, my money. So you know how like a bank loans out money? Well, they're loaning out my money. They're loaning out other people's money, so they're using my money to give to other people. That's how they won't make loans. They give out loans and stuff like that. So they need customers. So by being their customer, they're giving interest to my money being in there, sitting in there. They're making more money based on people taking out loans and having to pay them back. That's where they're making their money. So that's why they can give a little extra. When I take out a loan and I have to pay it back, I have to pay back extra.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for interest. So there's two ways so either I'm investing money or I'm taking out a loan.
Right.
And so there's two types of interest. One is simple interest. That's the one we're doing right now. But then we'll do compound interest, which is a little bit different. Well, they're both of them could be, simple interest could either be doing a loan or investing. Okay, so I know it's confusing. Let me do another example. So this is just me writing it out. Okay, and this is just me breaking it down. Okay, we don't have to do the poll. Well, we're going to do the poll, but I'm just going to talk about it, okay? So let's do it together again, so make sure we feel comfortable. Jackie invested $499. Pause. Invested. What does this represent? The P. This is the principal. This is how much I invested into my account. Okay, and if you're distracted, I need you not to be, because this is too complicated for you not to be paying attention. That pays 15%. Pause. What does it stand for? R. But I don't want it in percentage, so how do I change this percent to a decimal? Decimal places to the left. So this R equals 0.15. Annual simple interest. Simple interest. So I know this is simple interest, so I know I'm going to use the equation I equals PRT. Jackie will not make any additional deposits or withdrawals. How much interest Interest. It's asking only for interest this time. How much interest? So that's I. Will Jackie earn on her investment at the end of 3 years? What does 3 represent? T. And then it asks how much money in total. So that's asking for the total amounts in our account. So it's asking for 2 different things. So if you feel comfortable, go ahead and try to do it yourself. I'm going to do it all again pretty slowly. Simple interest is I equals PRT. This is the formula for simple interest. We already labeled our problem, so all I'm doing is plugging in. I equals 499, that's the P, times the R of 0.15, times the T of 3 years. All right, so I'm putting this in my calculator. 499 times 0.15 times 3. When I do that, that gives me 224.55. What does that amount mean? What does that number mean? That's the amount of interest. So after 3 years, my money had $224.55 extra added onto it. That's the amount of interest. This is my extra. Without me doing anything, my bank account added $224.55 to the original amount I put on. So this is the amount of extra. This is the interest. Taz, questions? I'm not done, but is there any questions about that part specifically? Okay, the second question says, how much money in total will be in her account? Total. How would I figure out how much is in total in her account? Perfect. I started with $499. The extra was $224.55. So I add the 2 amounts together to figure out how much I had in total. So my total amount would be my principal plus my interest, $499 plus $224.55, which is $723.55. Here's the total amount in my account after 3 years. Yes, sir.
So this isn't like but so with more money invested in my savings account, you get more interest since it's like 15% of 499 is less than 15% of 5,000.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And so, like when people do stocks, like you were talking about stocks, the more money you invest in the stock, if the stock is good, like if you get an increase, then the more money you'll end up getting. Okay.
People who invest like
Yeah, absolutely.
You just have to get lucky.
Yeah, that's the hard thing because there's a lot of people who invest their life savings and lose it all, right? So yeah. Okay. We're gonna move on from simple interest to compound interest now. Okay, so simple interest was one type of interest. Compound interest is a different type of interest. Okay, this one is harder for me to explain. I always have it's kind of hard for me to explain every year. Okay, but compound interest is where the interest is added on to the amount after every year. So how much is in your account, or I'm gonna act like it's a loan. Whatever the principal is after every year, that's what the compound interest is on that amount. So let's say I took out a loan, $10,000 from the bank of Trip. I paid $1,000 off that year. And then my compound interest will be on the $9,000. Whatever that is, I pay it off. Let's say I paid off $1,500 that year. So what's left in the account is $7,500. Then I do the compound interest is on that amount. So it's on whatever the amount is after every reoccurring year. While simple interest was always the percentage of the original amount. So if I'm taking out a loan, or if I'm investing my money, I want compound interest because it's going to be the interest after every year after my money's increasing. What I will do next class is I'll play a video of the difference between compound and simple interest because every year I feel like I never explain it the best. But anyways, we're just going to do the formula and we're going to talk about the different variables. So I'll let you write this down because I know some of y'all can't listen and write at the same time. I'll do attendance while y'all are writing this one down. Excuse me. Okay. The formula for compound interest is A equals P times 1 plus R to the power of T. To the power of T. Not times T. To the power of T. A stands for the total amount in the account. Total amount. So this is including how much I originally invested and or loaned out plus the interest. So this is the principal plus the interest. This is the total amount in the account. P stands for principal. So either how much I borrowed or how much I invested. R stands for rate again. This is in decimal form. And T stands for years. Okay, so the difference between simple interest and compound interest, simple interest was I equals PRT. I equals PRT. So simple interest gave us the interest. Compound interest is going to give us the total amount. Total amount. So let's look at a problem, and I'm going to go through it slowly, okay? All right. Please speak up if you do not understand. John goes to a different bank to compare options. At this bank, they tell John he can invest $10,000. Pause. What does this represent? P, principal. This is how much he starts with. This is how much he invested. He can invest $10,000 for compounded interest rate. This tells me this is compound interest. So this is how I do things. I like to write it out while I'm reading the problem. So I know this is compound interest, so I know I'm using the formula A equals P times 1 plus R to the power T. At a rate of 3.7%. Pause. 3.7%. What does this represent? And what would that be in decimal form? 0.037. So my decimal's here. Move it 2 places to the left. 0.037. For 10 years. Pause. 10 years. What does this represent? The T. So my T equals 10. So I haven't even read the problem yet, and I've already got all my information that I will need. How much money in total? In total. So this is asking for the total amount. Does he acquire? And how much interest over the 10-year period? Are we ready? Okay, so let's write down our formula again. Or I'm going to write it down. Maybe you already have it written down. Okay, so this is the formula I'm using. A equals P times 1 plus R to the power of T. So A equals, what was my principal amount? 10,000. So 10,000 parenthesis 1 plus, what's the R value? 0.037 to the power of what? 10. I don't know about you, but I ain't got to do that in my head. No, ma'am. No, sir. So I'm about to go to Desmos so I can show you how to put this in, because I know some of you don't know how to do it, which is fine. But please pay attention, because you depend on Miss Patterson to give you the answers all the time. You're not going to know what to do later on. So on my calculator, I'm going to put this in exactly the way it looks, not with the A equals, but the 10,000 part. So 10,000, open parenthesis, 1 plus 0.037, close the parenthesis. Please look if you do not know how to do power. I press this button right here, A to the power of B. When I press this button, it's going to bring my cursor up, and I'm going to bring 10. OMG, that's a big number. So it gave me 14,380. I'm around to nearest hundreds place because this is money, so 0.95.
That is a lot of money.
That is a lot of money. No? Okay. What does this number mean? What does this number mean? A equals this. What does A mean? This is the total amount. This is the total amount. So after 10 years, my account would have in total $14,380. This is the total amount in my account after 10 years. Well, the second question says, how much interest was that? Okay, if I originally invested 10, so please listen to my thought process here. If I originally invested $10,000 and after 10 years, there's now $14,380 in my account, how would I figure out how much interest that was? Subtract. Okay, so I'll say it again. I invested $10,000. After 10 years, my account says $14,380. Well, to figure out how much extra was added onto that, I would subtract the two numbers. So to figure out the interest, I would subtract my total amount minus my principal. So $14,380.95 minus $10,000 would equal $4,300, bless you, $80.95. This is the amount of extra that was added on to my account. This is the, why I put investment? I must put interest. This is the interest. Yes. On questions, great question. On questions, it's either going to ask you for the total amount or the interest. You need to know how to figure out both for both simple interest and compound interest. So that's why we're doing both of them. But you have to figure out what it's asking for, what it gave you, and what it's asking for, and how to get there. So it's going to either ask you for either or. Okay, I'm clearly aware that this is confusing. Okay, don't worry, I know. Zoomies, do I have any questions from y'all? Y'all quiet today. All good?
This seems easy to me.
Huh?
This seems rather easy to me.
All right. Kiara? Thank you for asking that. Absolutely. It will tell you whether it's simple interest or compound interest every time. All right. So this is just me explaining. Okay. Here's a great question. Okay. It's not showing me the whole question. Okay. So let's read through this one. I think this is the last one. Let's read through. No, actually it's not. But anyways, let's read through this one. And let's see if we can understand it as a class. If you've kind of been zoned out or distracted, try to zoom in on this one because this is gonna put everything we just learned together in one question. Olivia will deposit, so I'm gonna write Olivia's name because I gotta keep my stuff organized. Olivia will deposit $1,530. Pause. What's this represent? The P. This is my principal. This is how much I deposited. Into an account that earns 6%. Pause. What's this stand for? R. And what is that in decimal form? So 2 places to the left. 0.06. Okay. Simple interest. That's what Kiara was asking about. Will it tell me? Absolutely. So I'm gonna write out I equals PRT. So I like to pause. I'm sorry. I equals PRT. So I know I'm using simple interest formula for Olivia. Her sister, Melinda, all right, Melinda. Is that your sister thing? Oh, I thought you said, okay, oh. Melinda will deposit $1,500. Pause, what's that? That's my P. So that's my P for Melinda. In an account that earns 8%, there's my R, but I'm gonna change this to decimal form, 0.08. Let me pause real quick. Does everyone understand how to change percent to decimal? Move your decimal places 2 places to the left. Interest compounded. So this is compound interest. So Melinda is using compound interest. So I'm gonna use the compound interest formula. And I can't see the rest of the problem. The deposits will be made on the same day and no additional money will be, oh, there it goes, will be withdrawn from the accounts. Which statement about the balances of Olivia's account and Melinda's account at the end of 3 years is true? Okay, so the time is 3 years. So what I want everyone to do right now is for Olivia's account, just put in the numbers and see what you get. And then we'll talk about it. Yes, ma'am. Both of them are 3 years. Yeah. Okay, for Olivia, did y'all get it? Okay, for Olivia, did y'all everyone get 275.4?
Yeah.
What does this represent? The amount of interest her account has at the end of 3 years. So this was the extra that was added on. And you know this is the extra because this number is less than the original amount you invested. Okay, so this is the extra that was added on at the end of 3 years. So if I wanted to figure out her total amount, what would I do with this number? Perfect. I would add it to the original amount she invested. So she invested 1,530, 275.4 and 40 cents were added on to that at the end of 3 years. So I'd add these two numbers together. So 1,530 plus 275.4. That's my principal plus my interest. All right, now everybody do Melinda. If you're just sitting there, is it because you've already done it or you're waiting? Don't wait on the answer. You ain't learning anything looking at me. Do it yourself. Did everyone get 1,889.57? No? Okay, I'm gonna come see. In the wrong place, yeah. Okay, what does this number mean? This is the total amount in her account. That's why it says A equals total amount in her account after 3 years. I don't want to find the interest because I don't think the question is asking. I don't know what the answer choices say, but I don't think it's asking for the amount of interest. So at the end of 3 years, Melinda has $1,889 in her account. Olivia has $1,805 in her account after 3 years. Who had more in their account at the end of 3 years? Melinda had the most in her account. This is why I made us find out the total amount for Olivia. So we know, so we can compare their total amounts. Okay, so then answer the question. I don't know what the answer choices say, so y'all just gonna have to answer the question from here. I think it says Melinda's account will, well, I think I can hover over it. Okay, yeah, so it's just comparing the two. So Melinda will have more. You just need to figure out how much more she will have. For all the people who choose D because everyone else is choosing it. Oh, well. Okay, give me some feedback. Difficult?
Quite easy, but if you get something wrong,
A little complicated.
Yeah. And yes, it's a little complicated. Like Jesus said, if you mess up like any little part of it, it's going to throw your answers off. Absolutely. And that's the other thing I was going to say. It's understanding what it's saying. That's the hard part as well. Like you're talking about rounding wise? So since it's talking about money, go to 2 decimal places. So that 568, that 8 will make the 6 go up to a 7. Okay, yes, ma'am. Good question. I know I was talking about it like while y'all were writing. I'm gonna find a really good video to explain the difference. So I'm gonna show that next class. But there's a big difference on the way it's calculated, and that's That's the thing. Okay, so I'll find a really good video next class. This is like a diagram to show the difference, but yeah, anyways. Okay, I'll go back. Sorry, Jesus. What we're gonna do instead of doing the rest of the problems on this PowerPoint, our Nearpod, we're gonna go to the Canvas assignment and we're gonna do it together. I'm not doing it, but I'll get people to volunteer to do the problems. Okay, but we're gonna try to I wanna make sure we all get it. Okay, that's the point. I wanna make sure we all get it. Okay, so we're not gonna do this problem, but you can download this Nearpod into your thing in order to see if you feel like you understand. Okay, so I'm gonna go to the Canvas assignment. So you can exit out of Nearpod and go to Canvas. I felt like I just thought, oh, let me stop my recording.